Kathy, it's Favi, and I thought it would be helpful possibly for me to talk about your design a little bit by making you a video. So I have opened up your most recent design. You can see it here on my screen. You can see that this is the objects that you have used the red work tool on. We know that they're red work because if we look at them over here in a couple of different ways, if I select it, I can see that I could actually break it apart if I wanted to. I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm just going to comment that it really is cool when we see an object like this that, we don't have a gazillion tie-ins and tie-offs on it anymore when it has been branched. So I'm just going to look at something real quick. I didn't think to do this. I'm going to hide anything else except that. And where is your beginning and your ending? It looks like it's right over here at this, about right here. If I were to start doing a redraw, let's see. No? It's going to start over here on this kid here in the middle. So anyway, that was just a point. I didn't need to waste the time on the video actually doing that, so we'll go ahead and stop it. But what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and this is because, again, there are a couple of main points that I want to just address as you are working on a project like this, and different things that we have already discussed about it. One of the issues was that we want good pathing. We wanted, in the process of talking about all of that, I had made a suggestion to you that you go ahead and make the kids' faces in different colors and keep them separate from the main branched object. But I think you took it a little bit too far. And what I want to say about that is, let's unhide all. So basically, there are some places where it makes more sense to leave these faces as part of the main branched object. And what I'm talking about is, I'm going to zoom in here just as an example. First of all, this is the first issue I'm going to address, and then in a little while we'll talk about some of the other things about branching, etc. So, okay, the black part is all one branched object, and you kept this face in the orange as separate from the rest. It's over here in the sequence bar. She's going to be the last one that actually gets stitched. But what I'm trying to tell you is that there are parts of this face that could still have been part of the branched objects. You did not need to leave them separate. The only things that need to be left separate are the ones where you don't have a plan to let them touch something else. The isolated objects is how I refer to them in a previous email message when we were discussing this. So in the case of this little girl's face, really the only thing in my mind that needs to be an isolated object is her mouth. The nose is so close to the eyeglasses that you really could have had that nose connect. You could have just swung it back around a little bit so that it actually touched the edge of the glasses right here. You would never have even noticed that difference in the stitch out. But if you had wanted to still leave her nose isolated, I could understand that being a design choice that wouldn't necessarily be a terrible one. But her eyeglasses and her eyes could all have been, even the eyebrow, over here on the left side of her face. All of these features could have been a part of the original branched object because they touch something else. The frame of her glasses over here touches hair, touches her cheek. On this side of the face over here, there's no reason whatsoever that this little tiny space here couldn't have been touching the hair up here in order to keep that as part of the branched object. So, look at it logically here. Don't think about every single thing being literal when I said keep the facial features separate. This is another example over here on this child's face. And I know that you did this separately also because this was all done in gray. This could have all been part of the branched object except for his mouth. The mouth could have been an isolated object. Everything else could have been branched into the main branched object. I think that is almost the case for every single face that's on this. This eye here could have been part of the branched object because it is touching his hair right here. The nose, I think if this were my project here, I would have had the nose connect to the eye right here. I just would have moved that angle just a little tiny bit. The mouth, again, probably the mouth needed to be separate. I probably would have had the lower lip connect to the mouth somewhere along the line over in here and had that as an isolated object. More than likely, A design decision right here would have to have been made where maybe this entire eye would have been kept as an isolated object. But again, maybe not. Maybe you could have had just one little tiny connecting point right in here. So again, don't take things so literally when I say keep the facial features separate as isolated objects. I have opened up this face here because, you know, this is not, it's not branched at all. This is the way that you digitize it, and this is the design that I just opened up. What I did with this, all this little blue face, is I duplicated it and I put it into another screen all by itself so that we could work on it, and I could just walk you through how would I have digitized this so that each one of these eyes as an isolated object would have only had one tie-in and one tie-off instead of the many that you've got here for each one of these eyes. Same thing would have happened here for the mouth. So I'm going to digitize this and show you what I would have done here. All right, so we'll zoom in just a little bit. We'll work on the eye right here on the right-hand side first. So I locked it here so that it wouldn't move around as I'm digitizing it. This is what I would have done. You're going to be using an outline tool. Probably the single run is what I checked earlier, and you had used single runs. And this is just a little satin ball. So how I would have processed this is I would have chosen my digitized open shape, single run. If you want to play around with stitch lengths, etc., you can do that here. And one of the things that I know that you mentioned in one of your messages, I'll talk about that real briefly, is that some lines you want them to show up as a little bit more strong than other lines. There might be places where, let's say for example, this upper eye crease and maybe around the bottom of the eye here, you might want that to be stronger in appearance than maybe this eye crease here. So this is a little tip that I have when I'm digitizing, and I've got that same purpose in mind. So let's digitize our open shape. I'm going to start up here at the top of the eye crease, and I'm just going to come around, and I've looked at this before and I've already decided how I want to actually design this. So I'm going to stop right here with that first single run line, and I'm going to hit my enter key. At this point, I would go ahead and I would digitize a closed shape. And I'm going to use a closed object or a filled object here, and I'm going to choose satin. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the iris of this eye, starting right here where we see this little square box. That is showing where that last line ended. So I'm starting with this point right here, and when you draw circles, you really only, and it's going to be a closed object, you only need to put in that many, and I will close the shape, hit enter once again, and I'm going to open up my object tools here so we can see that that is that's the circle. We're going to play with the start and stop points on this circle in just a second, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. I'm going to come up to the reshape tool, and we're going to look at it. So it started where I told it to start, but it's ending up here at the top of the eye. I don't want it to end at the top of the eye. I'm going to move the end point back on down, right on top of the starting point. The reason why I'm doing that is because my next object I'm going to digitize, I'm back to open shape, back to single run, still using the same color. This time what it's done is it's moved my end point over here. And actually that's okay. You know, I really wanted it to end down here, but it's okay that it's ending here because this whole object with the pool compensation and everything here is still connected to this shape of the eye. All right, so it's okay for it to start right there. So I'm going to start with a single point. I'm coming up around, and over here I've got a design decision to make. Do I want to continue all the way up to the crease up here and come back around, or do I want to do this one here? It really doesn't matter. Either way, we're going to get the same end result. So I think I'm going to come all the way up to that eye crease. All right, and it's a shape that's pointed. I'm going to come across with a curve right there, a little curved node. I'm going to duplicate myself back. We're going to talk about this in a second. Come back around to here. Let's do this eye crease. Come all the way over. Backtracking on myself manually. And let's come back around, and let's just go all the way back to the beginning of our shape and end it right here. Enter. All right, so let's take a look at what we just created. I'm going to hide everything else. Hide unselected. Can you see what we did? We've got one tie in and one tie off here. And it's up here, and it's just showing with the little maze box because that's where the end of the design is at right now, since it's at the bottom of our sequence bar. So let's take a look at how it stitches out real quickly. Okay, so everything got stitched twice, just like it would if it was done with the red work tool, but I did it myself. And I had a little bit more control over it. This was a fairly simple object to digitize, but you can see the difference between the one that had all the tie-ins and the tie-offs compared to the one that I just did here. The other thing that I want to talk about briefly is you mentioned that sometimes you want your lines to show up just a little bit stronger, even though they're right on top of each other. And this is what I do. And it's one of the reasons why I think sometimes I would prefer to path this myself and digitize it myself rather than letting a program do it, is because I can use the reshape tool and I can see where, I have backtracked on top of myself a little bit here. We're zoomed in quite large here, but oftentimes what I'll do is I will just grab one of these some of these nodes and I just move them apart from one another a little bit. So over here in the corner here, if I wanted this line to show up just a little bit stronger, we are dealing with thickness of thread, and so if we don't have our thread just building up right on top of itself each time, we're going to get some depth to our design, and our lines can look a little bit thicker without having to go over them many times. So, look at your design in that light also. Where are those places where you wanted these to be a little bit stronger? So you see what I'm doing? I'm just moving my stitch points a little bit away from one another so that the stitches are just separated just by a little tiny bit. You can see how it's already making the eye look a little bit, I'm going to call it fluffier, for lack of a better word right now. And I'm just moving them in a minute amount. Oops, I moved the wrong one. I didn't want to move that. Put that one back. Okay. Understand what I'm talking about there? Again, also up in here, maybe you might want that to be a little bit thicker. Can't move these ones too much because we really want it to kind of start and end on top of each other. Otherwise, we could possibly get a little tie-in and a tie-off there. So anyway, if they're close enough, to one another, you can still have them separated by a tiny little bit. So anyway, I hope that those hints help you a little. Let's look at it in true view. Looks like a pretty nice little eye. Same thing would have gone probably for the mouth. Let's go ahead and let's unhide everything. Down here on the mouth, when we have the true view turned off again, I can see that you could do this all in one pass. You did not need to have these extra little tie-ins and tie-offs. Where would have been a logical place to start here with the mouth and her little crease for her cheek right there? I probably would have started right here. So let's just digitize it real quickly. I'm going to start here, and I would come around. Let's do a bottom lip. Again, maybe not being so precise so that we can get some thickness in here. Doing the top lip. I think it had a little bit of a crease right in here. Coming back around. Again, I'm being a little bit sloppy on purpose because I want that to look a little bit thicker. Over here, I could come down to the bottom one. Up to the top one. I think we might want a little bit of a curve in here. Might even make it a little bit bigger than what you had it. And back down again so that all of this is double stitched, okay? And I'll stop right here. And I'll enter. Let's look at it in true view turned on. All right, so see how we get that little bit of a thickness in here just because I don't have the nodes right on top of one another? If I select it and, turn on the reshape tool again, maybe I could choose which one of these nodes I might want to adjust a little bit. They're close to each other. They're adding the thickness in that we need. And that's just some good logical digitizing sense. One start and stop point. No extra tie-ins and tie-offs needed. So there you have it. So they're isolated objects. Let's go back to the original design and find that face. So we've kept the eyes as isolated object. We're not trying to connect them into the big branched area. Same thing with the nose and the mouth. So if I were to be stitching this face out and I had done my, let's come back over here, you know, this eye first, we have talked earlier about how we sometimes might want longer jumps in between some of these isolated objects than close ones. So maybe what I would do is I would do this eye. I don't think this is a bad amount of space for the machine to have to jump. If you're manually trimming your own threads, it would probably be an okay distance to get your little snips in there and snip it yourself, or letting the machine snip it for you. So I would go ahead and do an eye, and then probably I would let it jump all the way down. You know, maybe I'd go ahead and do the mouth, and then I would jump over to the nose. I would probably not have the mouth end here and then jump to this point right here. That's kind of a close one. So hopefully what I'm saying here is that the way that I would probably path it, let's do this real quickly. Well, I don't confuse you too much. I'm going to select the nose. I'm going to Control D to duplicate it. I'm going to flip it. And even though it's not the exact same eye, I'm just going to go ahead and play like it is the eye over here. Actually, you could probably have, you know, do it a little bit of tweaking to it. Let's go ahead and digitize the little kid's nose. It's going to be an open shape. We'll start here. And enter. This time I think I will just select it and do a backtrack. All right, so his nose has been created. So this is probably how I would path these four objects if it were me. I probably would go ahead and do the first eye. I'm going to go ahead and group these things so that they don't flop apart here on me. The mouth doesn't need to be grouped. This eye does need to be grouped. And the nose needs to be grouped, just so that we don't pull them apart accidentally. So maybe what I would choose to do actually is maybe I would do the nose first, because it's going to start and end right here. And then I would do a great big jump. All right, so I'm going to move him up a little bit. Then I would do this eye. Then, you know, make a decision. Do you want this jump from here to here? Or would you rather have it jump all the way down here and then back up to here? Decision time is yours. I think for me, I probably would have come down to do the mouth next. And the reason why is because that's a good long jump in between here and here. Like I've said before, you know, with me, if I'm going to manually snip my threads, I would rather have a longer distance to snip, because it's just easier to get your little scissors underneath there. If the machine is going to snip a thread, kind of the same principle in my mind, not too far. I mean, I wouldn't want it to jump all the way from this eye all the way over to, you know, an entirely different face. But sometimes those little tie-ins and tie-offs are hard on the machine, and sometimes they don't look so good. You get those little fuzzy ends. So kind of think about, you know, your pathing. And in this instance, I'm calling this your pathing. You know, what sequence you want the little pieces to be in, so that either your manual trimming or your machine trimming does a good job and is nice looking at the end of it. So there you have it. You know, just again, look at all of these objects, which ones of them could be included in the main outlines and which ones just can't. How many tie-ins and tie-offs do you actually need here? When can you make things connect? Here on this face here, this nose could have connected, depending on how you put this little piece together, could have connected with her eyeglasses. Don't need all these little tie-ins and tie-offs. They can connect to the other objects. There was another place too, and I'm not going to remember exactly which one it was, but and it might have been on several of them, of the children that have glasses on, and I know that you use the stem stitch for those glasses. And there was a couple of places where you had the stem stitch on top of each other 2 times. My preference would be in a situation like that. Let's just say we're going to stitch these glasses in red. We're going to digitize almost always. I'm going to tell you almost always you're going to be digitizing open shapes rather than closed shapes when you are doing these sort of facial features and these kinds of objects right in here. So I'm going to digitize these glasses really quick, okay? I didn't even look to see what we're stitching them right now. Yeah, in a single run. That's okay, we can change that in a little bit. So I'm coming around. I'm going to change that in a while to a stem stitch like you have liked. I'm coming back around here. At this point in here, I would have come only to about right here. And I would have done that as one object. And then I would have done his eye. Oops, I'm going the wrong direction. I would have come in here and I would have digitized the eye. Very similar to, you know, what we just did a little while ago, probably doing the pupil first, letting it start and end right near something else that's right in this area here. And then I would have come around and I think probably come to here, backtrack on it so I don't have to come back over that anymore. This here, I would have come all the way around. Let's see, where did I start and stop at? I'm getting a little bit confused because I'm not focusing too much on what I'm doing. So then maybe, yeah, coming back to this. Is that what I wanted to do? Yeah, backtrack a little bit here. Maybe do that pupil end up here again. Change my stitch style back into the stem stitch if you really like this stem stitch. I think a better option, or maybe just another option, and then I would have ended it here. Enter. All right. Would possibly be maybe using the triple run. Backstitch and stem stitch. I think backstitch. I was mistaken. You used backstitch, not the stem stitch. I think sometimes triple run might do a better job at some of these profound lines. But once again, thinking about how I just talked to you when I was telling you here about just moving those nodes a little bit of a distance apart, you know, might give you the effect you're wanting without having to backtrack too much on top of things or choosing a stronger stitch type. Again, you know what, your design, I'm going to just tell you this too quickly before I close out this video. The design is fairly small, and sometimes using some of these decorative, more decorative types of line stitches might not be the best choice. So think about that too, you know, just maybe drawing the line and having those nodes a little further apart. So I've chattered on long enough. I hope that what I'm saying to you is making sense and that it is helpful. And once again, I just want to say I really commend you for working and sticking with this project, because I know you mentioned that you were getting a little weary of trying to make it come out really good. So keep at it, Kathy. It's going to be worth it. And I know that the people that you're stitching this for are going to really appreciate it as well. So just let me know if you need any more assistance. Bye-bye for now.